Hi, my name is Girish Belly, your host for today for Back to Basics. Hope everything's okay and you heard the last week's episode. Any comments, good or bad, it makes my show stronger and I will keep on giving you quality episodes. So today we're going to talk about cloud. No, not the weather cloud. We're talking about the cloud computing. We're talking about infrastructure, we're talking about data, we're talking big data, we're talking small data. We'll talk about all that and how expensive and how cheap it is and what is it all about, and we'll just go right to the basics on that. So today we have a guest. We have actually two guests from the same company. The company name is Offsite and the people are Farhan Haider and Kal Rathod. So we will talk to both of them and we will get to the basics of that. So guys, how are you doing today? And thanks for joining Back to Basics.
Doing great, Gary. Thanks for having us.
So before we get into the basics of everything else, the first thing is one by one. What does Back to Basic mean to you?
Okay. You want to lead, Cal?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, if I had to put that into a statement, I would say back to basics, meaning, it goes back to an original way, original form, original method of doing something, brings it back to its simplicity of form, if you will. So, I mean, that's what it means to me, going back to the basics, right?
Yeah, that's correct. How about you?
Yeah, it means a podcast. No, actually, I'm just kidding. I back to basics. I think it's a wonderful term, especially during this time. We're facing COVID and all of the issues that are going on around us, and I think it's made us it's made all of us take a step back and really think about how we approach life in general. And so, one of the things that I've realized is, some of the simple things, just as Cal mentioned, simplicity, that we've lost the focus on as we started getting caught up in the whirlwind of stuff that goes on throughout our days. We forgot to focus on the simple or those basic things that really made our life whole, right? That we grew up with as children and we recognized and lived and learned those passions, the memories that stuck with us. So I think going back to basics is kind of taking it back to that level, just looking at things in a much simpler manner. And allowing ourselves to actually appreciate those things.
Right.
Yeah, thank you guys for all that insight there. So now, the first question is, when we say cloud, does that mean that I can just put a PC in my room and just give it out to the world? Is that what cloud is, or is it something else? Because what I have found out with my research is that is considered hosting.
So I guess I'll start off and, let's just give a quick 30-second background on what Offsite is. So Offsite is a cloud services or cloud solutions provider. What we do is we provide the capability for small to medium-sized businesses to take their on-premise hardware and bring it into the cloud. So we're simplifying that capability. My responsibility within Offsite is the sales and marketing, and Farhan's responsibility is the technical side. So he provides the governance and architecture and everything around the technical side. Now, to answer your question, cloud is a misnomer. It's used heavily, but I would say a good portion of folks don't really understand what cloud really means. When people think cloud, especially on the consumer side, people think iCloud, right? What's happening with iCloud. And for that fact, people don't even truly understand what that means. Now, what cloud truly means from a computing standpoint is you're essentially using someone else's servers. So to be able to get that computing capability, you're using somebody else's. So in a typical environment, when we talk about organizations and having their IT, their information technology capability, it meant having a physical on-premise closet or a big, room, or even a data center at their office that gives them that computing capability for its users and their overall organization. So what cloud, in its true essence, from a business or organizational standpoint, means that you're using somebody else's servers, and that somebody else could mean Amazon, which is Amazon Web Services. It could mean Microsoft Azure, or it could mean Google Cloud. So that is essentially what cloud truly means, somebody else's computing environment. or database environment. Ron, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what it is. And I think in the most basic terms, Gary, you kind of nailed it. It's using someone else's computer. So it could be as simple as just the storage on your phone that's in the cloud, or it could be as complicated as running, full-blown applications in the cloud that allow your users to, for example, go on Amazon and shop. Right. So you can make it very simple or you can complicate it, but the idea essentially is that you're renting service from someone else who's going to manage and maintain an environment for you, and you're just using it for the service that you need.
Yeah. Well, if I can just add a little bit more to that, Gary. So it's take the example of a plane, right? Rather than buying your own plane, what you're doing is you're saying, I'm going to rent out a couple of spots or seats on a plane, or the entire plane, for a matter of fact, right? So if somebody is a bigger organization and they need the entire 300 seats on our airplane, or if you're just traveling for a vacation with your family, you're renting out 3, 4, 5 seats on that plane. And that's essentially what Farhan alluded to in terms of renting space with somebody else's servers or somebody else's computing environment.
Thank you for that. So guys, first of all, the reason why they're calling me Gary is they've known me for years. It's actually Girish, but we will get into that basics later on in another show, another topic, another podcast show. So now regarding cloud, is it still a struggle to explain to people what cloud is, or do you think we're here and people, they know what cloud is?
Oh yeah, we're definitely here. We've been here for quite some time, and I don't consider it a struggle to explain to people. As a matter of fact, being in the business, we're very enthused about it. We love going in and talking to small businesses, especially that are using older technologies that don't understand the capabilities that exist that can help them to really leverage technology and cloud and be able to compete against some of the bigger dogs out there. And so when we go in there and have conversations about the cloud, it's a very enthusiastic conversation. And Cal does a lot more of the sales than I do, but I do join him here and there in the technical aspect. And I love explaining what the cloud is for them and what the capabilities are and how they're going to be able to leverage it.
Yeah, I think to add on to what Farhan just said, it's also a mindset, right? Where people or organizations or businesses have looked and said, oh, well, we'll wait another 5 years or whatever before we actually have to do it. COVID has forced a lot of folks to bring up that timeline a little bit earlier than 5, 7, 10 years, because the necessity for them to be able to have employees work from home was prevalent in the COVID timeframe, which we're still in, by the way. And the latest data shows that performance and productivity wasn't impacted. So a lot of organizations are moving. I just read Spotify. Employees can work from anywhere forever, right? Mm-hmm. I think Google's done that. Mm-hmm. There's so many organizations that have done that from a bigger scale. It said that, we realized that performance and productivity didn't get impacted as much as we thought. And now they're either downsizing their office spaces and saving money on their leases, or they're getting rid of offices completely because they're able to accomplish what they need to accomplish, having their users work from home or anywhere for that fact.
So Cal, I mean, even with the school education, right? I mean, that's the same thing. So people are getting more acclimated regarding remote. Now, for example, there are places like, I don't know, I-level or A+ for kids and JEI. They used to be weeklies and, twice a week meetings with the teacher itself in the site, on site. Now I think the semantics have changed. And you think we're going to go back to where it is after when COVID is done, or do you think it's here to stay?
It's here to stay. Yeah, it's here to stay.
Yeah.
And I think most, whether it be education, whether it be privately held companies, publicly held companies, everybody's realizing that what they were able to accomplish during times of need, when we all had to get things done, to make sure that their businesses were surviving. It got done. People scrambled to figure out what they're going to do. Even things simple as like Zooms. people didn't really even know what Zoom was. And we know this because when we started our company many years ago, we used Zoom pretty much from day one. Right. And it was a struggle to get people to understand, oh, what is this meeting invitation, or what is Zoom? Yeah. Now, when I say Zoom, everybody knows what it is. When we say Microsoft Teams, everybody knows what it is. Yeah. So that understanding from an entire entire organization or multiple organizations, everybody knows what these technologies are. And again, I think that is also something that is leading to people are going to know that this is here to stay. And as you start seeing all these organizations saying that you can work from anywhere, that's not going anywhere now. It's actually, that's why I said that timeline has been brought up for all organizations to start thinking about what they're going to start doing when it comes to giving users flexibility to work in a remote environment, or even in an office environment, but be a little bit more efficient, a little bit more lean.
Yeah. For offices and businesses alike, of course, they recognize the productivity advantages, the cost savings that they can have. But Gary, you mentioned, with schooling, for example, there's a human element that I think that we cannot lose, right? That has to come back. So absolutely, the things that are going to change, they'll never go back to the way they were. But we're going to have to find a balance on how we can have our children continue to interact with people, because we need that as humans physically to be able to be face to face. But at the same time, be able to take advantage of, being able to school remotely. Like, for example, we're here in New Jersey. We've had quite a few snow days, right? We've gotten a lot of snow in, and our kids are still able to do the schooling. They're able to stay at home. I think they learned what I would call executive skills at a very young age. I have a 13-year-old daughter now. She just turned 13 yesterday, and a 9-year-old son. And these kids now know how to wake up in the morning on their own, get in front of a computer, log in, pull up their assignments. It's what they would be doing at a college level, right? And they're doing that at this level now. So,
but I think in these times, I think this situation has forced the kids to be in this situation.
100%, right? And necessity is the mother of all inventions, right? It gets people to get running and to learn to think. And I think our children definitely gained a lot from COVID, from having to learn this way to adapt. But at the same time, they did miss out on a lot, right? It was an adjustment that definitely took one step back, but I think we're going to take 2 steps forward. I'm very, I'm happy about this. I think it was a very different approach on how we can adapt, and we learned a lot from it. I think the kids in the future, when we start going back and start engaging again with people face to face, we're going to be much better off in that.
I mean, look, certain things you can't avoid, like schooling is going to be back in person. A lot of companies will be back in the office. There's no avoiding it, and I think to Farhan's point, that human face-to-face interaction is not going to go away. I think what it is it's going to give organizations a lot of flexibility to say, okay, well, you know what? Instead of coming in for 5 days a week, you can come in for 3 days a week or 2 days a week, whatever it may be. You're going to see a lot of different creative ways that people are going to come into the fold here and figure out how they could best leverage the capabilities that they have, as well as the continuance of face-to-face communication, because that is important. And I'll tell you, I'm a very social person. I was really struggling for those 3 months that I was literally locked down. I couldn't do anything, right? So I know that I'm going to need that face-to-face interaction. So that's not going to change much for me. I'm going to continue doing that. But I think we're going to see a lot of creativeness when it comes down to figuring out what and how people are going to do things.
So guys, regarding cloud, does it run on its own? Is it automated, or who manages that? I mean, do we have a person behind and doing a click, or how does that work?
Yeah, there's someone definitely clicking away, and Cal and I have had conversations about that. Actually, it's funny that you mentioned click, because he says I do a lot of clickety clacking when I'm on my own in the back end. And yeah, I mean, look, the advantage of cloud is one of the main things you mentioned, automation, right? That's huge, because Now what you're able to do, and I don't want to get too deep into the weeds of technology, but where you had physical infrastructure, where you have servers and cables and wires and interconnection, right? When you put it into the cloud, now what the cloud providers have done is that they've given you an interface that allows you to do that remotely, right? They're your remote hands. So all of your network connectivity, for example, becomes a piece of code. So your infrastructure now is running as code for you. And what you're able to do when something is code is automated. So we love being able to talk to companies about that and tell them, hey, listen, we know you've been struggling with this physical overhead where you have to go into this raised floor, you have to run power cables, you have to run Ethernet, you have to run these wires. All of that goes away when you go into the cloud. We can have capability put into the cloud and you press a button and boom, here you are, launching an entire infrastructure of multiple servers and networks and devices, and they're all done with the click of a button.
So, listeners, you have to understand there are some few semantics regarding cloud, but here's a rundown of what Farhan has mentioned. If you have a server which is, let's say, Dell, and you want to change it to HP, the cloud computing is going to stay. The code is going to stay. It's the infrastructure can just change automatically. So, Farhan, you think that's a true statement, what I said, or you think there's more to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the physical hardware is no longer your responsibility. You don't have to worry about it when you're a customer, right? So you put in your request and it goes through and it happens in the back end, and it's fairly automated now. So yeah, definitely.
I think one of the most important things for people to realize is when you're talking about physical hardware, and this doesn't have to be servers. We're dealing a lot with what's called desktop as a service now.
Mm-hmm.
It's physical devices, your desktops, your laptops,
Yep.
iPads, Chromebooks, whatever your organization uses. All that physical endpoints that you have, whether it be servers or these endpoints, the devices, there's a procurement process, there's a provisioning process, there's an administration and a management process around it, right? That entire life cycle essentially goes away because you're eliminating the need for hardware, capabilities or requirements. And then two, the cost around it, right? The cost for going towards these models is reduced down significantly, especially, when you talk about paying a year up front for something from a server standpoint. If you do a year in advance payment, you're going to save 30 to 40% lower cost than actually paying pay as you go, because cloud is pay as you go model, which is one of the most biggest and important aspects of it. You're not required to spend all that money up front, right? You're going to just pay as you go. Now, if you want to spend all that money up front, you're going to save a lot more around it too. So that procurement and provisioning aspect is very, very important. And when I say provisioning and administration management, that is the resourcing that is required for you to be able to have somebody take that device, whether it be a server or a desktop or a laptop, set up the operating system, set up the applications that they need, right? That help desk type of capabilities. The administration and management, if your fan goes out on the laptop or desktop, if your hard drive crashes, if your monitor is broken, keyboard's cracked, right? All those things are part of the administration management. So that entire life cycle goes away because cloud computing gives you the capability. As long as you have internet access, you're able to get on the cloud and be able to do what you need to do to maintain your business continuity and operation.
So, Cal, I was just about to ask you this question. I think you must have answered it, but it looks like cloud is going to be cheap versus an actual equipment and wires that you're going to have in the data centers or even at home. Is that correct?
So, yeah. So when you're talking about costing, most costing involves two things. There's total cost of ownership, or TCO, and return on investment. So when you're looking at the total cost of ownership around having servers, having desktops and laptops for your employees, that cost altogether is your total cost of ownership. Now, it may sometimes be in the long run that you're saving money over, a 2, 3 year, 5 year period. So you have to look at that overall total cost, as well as that ties it back into the return on investment. Now, the thing is, when you're looking at that cost, you have to look at the holistic picture. You have to look at the direct costs, right? What does it cost you for that equipment? You have to look at the indirect cost. Does it take, X amount of dollars to power it, to cool it, to heat, to do whatever you need to do to make sure that that environment is stable. So the total cost of ownership is very important. And yes, they're most of the times we're able to save a lot of money because of that upfront heavy load. Most servers have a 3 to 5 year lifetime. They need to be replaced, not just fixed. They need to be replaced. And we run into situations all the time where organizations have had their servers for 10, 12, 15 years, and they're degraded, right? It's like your car. After a certain period of time, there's gonna, the tires are gonna bald. You may have other issues going on with the car, the check engine light. So you need to consistently keep maintaining it, and over a period of time, that car is going to be basically, it's going to be dead in the water. At some point, it will be. So you need to know when you need to upgrade that car. And the same thing for these servers or desktops or laptops, they have to be upgraded on a consistent basis. And that cost for that upgrade or changing out is gone, right? You're essentially eliminating it because you're not the one who's buying and procuring and all these things. It's somebody. It's AWS. It's Microsoft Azure that's doing it. So that's where the cost could be. You might be able to see a return right away, or it may take you a little bit of time. But there's definitely a cost savings that is associated with going to cloud. But the operational efficiency is the biggest part. When you take into the fact that, when your users are having problems logging in, right? We run into a lot of problems where users are using, an organization that has Citrix or VPN or anything like that. They're not able to log in. They're not able to get what they need to get done for their business or their job function. And that is a detriment to the overall performance of the organization, right? So I'll give you a perfect example. My wife, they have their organizations, decently large organization, and they've had issues where they can't, her team hasn't been able to log on and do what they need to do. Now, what does that mean to you? What does that cost to you? If you can understand what that cost is, and you're paying these people, whether it's 5, 10, 15, 20 people a pretty decent salary, you break down that salary, that's an indirect cost that is associated with that total cost of ownership. So, the users that were having issues logging on for a week, 2 weeks, that they weren't able to essentially do their job function because they were prohibited by not being able to do it. So that total cost of ownership is very important.
So regarding data, okay, it seems like there's so much data that we're just saving. I mean, we're saving let me start again. So the data that we're saving is more of for the settings and requirement of the laptop or a PC, right? And then on top of that, we're saving data like pictures and videos and documents, right? Is that cheap also? Or is that, how does that work?
Yeah, storage is actually one of the biggest advantages of the cloud, right? Because storage is so cheap there. So you're able to now, and I think most people that we know in terms of, when Cal was talking about direct and indirect costs and all that overhead that comes along with it, I think we've all been at a point because at least us here, we're old enough to know that we used to back up our pictures. We'd have hard drives and we'd save it on there, and we'd always have this concern about, oh, if this hard drive stops working, which used to happen quite often, right? And we didn't have those type of like mirrored or like rated copies of drives in our homes most of the time. And so what the cloud has allowed us to do is, you can go on Amazon, for example, if you have a Amazon account, and like a Prime account, you have unlimited photo storage. iCloud, you can buy storage, paying as you go monthly charges for terabytes and terabytes of data where you can store all of your pictures and videos. And we know that they're secure there. We know that they're backed up, and that we're not going to lose them. So it becomes simple. And not just that, they actually organize it for you, right? Because the cloud storage now, because of automation, it's able to read the metadata behind your images. It'll categorize it for you. You can label it by faces for facial recognition. You can organize it by date and time. And we see this on our phones all the time. Like I can go into a month in a particular year and see the pictures that I had. So the organizational aspect of it, the simplicity of backing up and managing it, and us just taking the picture and automatically going up there, it's all simplified.
So regarding data and the pictures, Farhan, you just mentioned that you just click your picture and you take a look at it, right? So there's a two question to this, okay? One is, how do we tell people that it's actually secured? Because security is a big topic. Because if you really look at it, I'm not saying that you have inappropriate pictures, but you have pictures, personal pictures, family pictures, kids pictures. So it's tough to advertise to people about security.
Yeah.
Now regarding the other thing about pictures is, I think we're fading away from printed pictures, because back in the old school we used to have albums. Now the album concept, I think it's kind of gone. So how do we answer those two questions? Two separate questions, but they're two.
I mean, just taking on the security part of it first, that's huge. We deal with it every day because people generally tend to still be uncomfortable with putting their information and data to a place where they don't know where it's actually going to exist, right? You're telling me it's in the cloud, but where is that? And who's looking at it? And who's managing it? Good thing about the way business in the U.S. works is, we have compliance requirements for certain types of levels of businesses. So a company like Amazon, for example, is required by law to protect your data and to not share it unless you specifically requested or if you signed off or checked off, some fine lines that they provide to you. So when we put our data into the cloud, when you're going for servers and data, you have to know what you're doing. And that's really important, right? Because anyone can go onto the cloud right now and, launch a server and have their, private information that's really important exposed. So that's why it's important to go to the professionals, the folks who understand how the cloud works and how you can actually secure your data. The idea would be, at least for offsite, let me give you an example. Our approach is always least privileged, right? And the way we define our solutions or how we architect them is through best practices that are defined through the cloud provider. So Amazon has, for example, and I'm saying Amazon, but we're in Microsoft, we're doing Google as well. But they all have best practice white papers available for you, and they show you how you should, distribute an architecture into the cloud, how you're going to secure it. And so we follow those best practices. We make sure it's least privileged, meaning like no one has access unless you explicitly define access for that person or individual or service. So everything is blocked off. When you're working with information that's required to have some sort of compliance level, whether it's PCI, if you're dealing with credit cards, for example, or if you have, medical information, HIPAA compliance and such, there is a strict control, like technical compliance controls that you have to follow, and there are, policies and those type of controls that have to exist within a business to enforce those technical solutions or those capabilities. So it's very important to do these type of things the right way when you're going into the cloud. We always tell our prospects or possible customers, sure, you can go into the cloud, but let's do it the right way. Because you can take your environment as it is, just take the servers and throw it in there, and you're not taking advantage of the cloud. You're not saving money, and you're making it insecure. What we try to do is use cloud native technologies. So when you're going into the cloud, we're not going to just look at lifting and shifting. We want to make sure that, okay, this is a service that you're running on premises right now. How can we efficiently deploy it into the cloud utilizing the cloud tools that exist? Databases may run differently as they do on a premise environment as they would in the cloud, right? You can use database as a service, for example. So,
but Farhan, but the answer. No, go ahead, Cal.
Add something to that, right? So Farhan was speaking more from a controls perspective when it relates to security, right? What we typically overlook is the physical aspect. And when I say physical aspect, so AWS, Microsoft Azure, Google, any other cloud platform provider, they use, they have these hot, number of square footage, like thousands and thousands of square footage facilities where they house all these servers, right? It's fully secured, access control, video surveillance, security guards. They have all those measures in place, right? They have leak protection for water, right? Leaking protection. They have, whatever security measures that you could think of, they have established. Now, when you're talking about on-premises for an office or offices, you may have people that are walking into these server closets. You may have people. I've been into offices where people have their servers in the conference room, fully exposed. People could put a USB in there, grab information, people can unplug it, and now you don't know what's happened. People can cut wires, you have no idea. So security wise, from a control standpoint, again, least privilege, go through the best practices, but from a physical perspective, there's so much more there that's typically missed because people don't realize or even see that as a viable entity when it comes to security.
So you remember a Gartner study that they put out recently. They said, your information in the cloud is actually more secure than it would be on premise or in your environment. The reason for that is because most of the time the security breaches that happen are through social engineering, which means it's internal, right? So folks within you, within your team, around you may, for example, find a password on a post-it, right? That's written on your desktop or on your table or your desk, or they go into a server room and they can see a server is unlocked. This type of stuff doesn't happen in the cloud, right? When it's in the cloud, the folks that want access to it, they can't reach it unless they have, as I mentioned, explicitly defined access to those environments.
So guys, regarding the same question in a small answer, obviously, but more on the residential and consumers. I mean, we're talking more business, right? Now, from the consumer point of view and the residential people, okay, how do we explain that cloud is secure and cloud is here to stay? You can go to Facebook, you can go to settings, and you can say, don't post your maps or don't share my location. How do we explain that? I think it's an ongoing awareness that we need to give people.
So from a daily consumer, physical, a residential customer, if you will, right?
Yeah.
Or personal consumer, when we get pushback on security, when we're talking to business customers, I usually ask the question, do you have a Gmail or a Yahoo or any free email service that's out there? And most of the times, 95% of the times, they say yes. So those technologies are cloud-based technologies, cloud-based email.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that you send, receive, documents, whatever it may be, that's all sitting in the cloud on Google server, right? Through Gmail or Yahoo server or anybody else's server for that fact. So that right there gives them a peace of mind knowing, oh, snap, I was able to send my W-2 documents to my accountant using my Gmail. It's secure, right? Now in life, nothing is foolproof. Nothing. Zero is foolproof. So there could be a potential that your email gets hacked. We have people that are, always trying to maliciously hack into your email or your Facebook account or whatever it may be, your social media. So nothing is foolproof. But for the everyday user, the personal consumer, if you have a Gmail, if you have a Yahoo, you're already in the cloud. If you have an iPhone or an Android, you're using some sort of cloud service. Android is a little bit different, but iPhone, you're using iCloud to store your data and information in the cloud, right? That's iCloud. So that usually puts a lot of peace of mind to the personal consumer that, hey, I'm already using these services, I'm already in the cloud. But from our perspective, we typically don't get involved with the residential or personal consumer because it's more of a broader scale, right? If I have 10, 20, 100 users in my organization, how do I give them the capability of getting their work done?
Yeah, I think the biggest question there when we're talking about home, and I do this myself, being as technical and geeky as I am, right? On my phone, is convenience versus complexity, and so we all know in the back of our heads, it's like a little voice telling us, I should probably change my password. I've had this password for years, right? So these type of things, if you want to secure our phones, our local devices for our pictures and stuff, there are certain things you can do. My recommendation is, first of all, to use complex passwords, change them regularly, maybe 6 times a month, or like 6 months, let's say twice a year, for example, right? And get a password manager. And I think that is one of the most convenient things that I have purchased in my life, because I can tell you, I have over 500 passwords saved in my password manager. There's no way I'm going to remember them because they're all different and they're auto-generated.
Yeah.
But that makes everything more secure for me. And I don't have to have that one password that's used across all of my services, because now if someone hacks my Facebook, they're going to get into my Instagram, they're going to get into my Gmail, they're going to get into my bank accounts. That's something that you don't want. So get a good password manager, and that is the number one thing for residential users because your pictures on Amazon are using login and password. Your pictures on iCloud are using your login and password. If you want to raise a little bit more complexity, the next best thing to do is allow. You heard of MFAs, multi-factor authentication, right? A lot of sites are starting to use that now. That when you put in your username and password, now you have to verify it by providing a code that may be either emailed to you or it's texted to you. Those are the other things. If you're able to apply these basic concepts, and I know it's very complex, I don't use multi-factor authentication for a lot of my stuff because I think it's a pain in the ass to some degree, excuse me for my language, but it's difficult at times to use that. But changing your passwords, having a password manager, making sure your passwords are complex enough and they're different, I think that goes a long way in securing your residential or your personal stuff.
So guys and listeners, think of it this way. Cloud is pretty much here to stay. For example, you got PlayStation 5. It's all cloud-based. I mean, there's no CD for that, okay? There's another example. You have Microsoft Office, which is all cloud-based. Yes, you can buy a little extra license if you want to download it to your PC, but it is technically all cloud-based. So, Farhan, you mentioned about automation. Automation is a big, huge, complex thing. Yes, I get that. But is it actually killing jobs too at the same time when we do automation? Or do you think we're getting a little more organized?
Essentially, well, so I'll tell you, I'll give you an example where a country that has been adapting more technology is Germany, more than a lot of the other countries out there. And yes, it takes away certain aspects of your businesses or work, let's say the blue collar jobs that may exist to some degree, but it adds on a different occupation in a sense. So what we've noted, for example, if we're talking about automation in the cloud, you have positions that recently came up like DevOps, right? That didn't exist. If you look back 5, 7 years ago, you would be very surprised and you'd wonder what it is. And it's basically taking the developers and the operation folks and combining them and bringing this new position that's called DevOps that allows you to work in the cloud and automate a lot of your development and your infrastructure. So, one of the hottest jobs out there right now, by the way, and people are dying to hire folks within that environment, and they're making a lot of money. So yes, I think jobs do go away through automation, but it's a natural progression of a society where we're starting to go towards a direction where we utilize more of the technology around us to become more efficient, and that is in turn creating more jobs.
Yeah, I think to add on to what you're saying, Farhan, jobs do go away based on what we're putting out there from a cloud computing standpoint, and the bigger aspect I think is for organizations that want to be a little bit more leaner, a little bit more efficient. By having that streamlined process of saying, well, we had 5 people doing this job, now we can have 2 people instead of 5. We're saving that additional overhead, right? So it's twofold. Yes, unfortunately, it's a sad truth that some people may move away from that function. But the other thing is a business is a business is a business. Their focus should be operational efficiency as well as cost savings.
Yeah,
right?
let's always keep history. Let's always keep history in mind, right? I mean, we went through the industrial era where there was factories and refineries and all of these businesses where you had hundreds and thousands and thousands and thousands of workers. Those positions no longer exist. That's all automated. You have robots doing a lot of that. We haven't cut down in jobs. People are more and more employed, even though we're in a tough spot right now where we have the highest unemployment. But compared to then, jobs have been created. There are new positions. So I think we're going to continue to move in that direction. Things are going to change, but a lot of new jobs are going to be created as we move forward.
But Farhan, I think now these times it looks like people are getting forced to get more creative to get what it is instead of being in the IT automated.
Well, when we went from industrial era into the service era, that was creativity kicking in, right? It was, hey, we need to figure out a new way to do things. How do we satisfy the consumers' requests, everything that they're dying for, and so we came up with new ways to do that. And going into the cloud, that's innovation in itself.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. There's more and more creative ways, and I love that because the younger generation, my children, for example, they're thinking of things that I would not have even dreamed of thinking about at my age,
That's
and,
right.
and they're figuring out ways to do things in a lot more creative manner. But that's life. I think that's cyclical. It'll continue to improve. People will think a lot faster and better as more information becomes available to us.
So, guys, one last question before we leave for today. Automation. Auditing. Now, is it more organized? Cloud is more organized, or is it all haywired everywhere? Because if you look at it from a basic point of view, if you look at a file, I think you have different fields. You have created date, you have modified date, you have length of MP3s or movies. So yeah, so is auditing a little tough, or is it easier now?
I'd have to say it's a lot easier if it's done the right way. Like, everything comes back. You have to take it to the basics, right? In order for you to be able to have your ducks in a row, you have to organize how you approach. There has to be a systematic approach in how you deploy your services, how you manage your information, and a lot of the knowledge base that we've gained that we try to save as a small company. For us, for example, we make sure that we're creating process and procedures, and we document it in the tools that we use. And those tools allow us to label the documentation, and that labeling allows us to search and find what we need. So these type of things really help us as long as we're utilizing the tools properly. It helps us to organize better. And when you're going in and you're setting up a service or you're looking up of a solution that you want to provide to your customer, you have to, nothing just happens overnight and it's not easy. You have to go through iterations of understanding how can you make it most efficient and accessible and simple,
Hmm.
right? The simpler we make services, the more likely we're able to sign on customers, right? As a business, and Cal understands that. I mean, for us, we've gone through so many, like pricing models and conversations about how we present our solutions to the customers. We realize the simpler we make it for them, the easier it is of a decision for them, the faster they'll sign on to that.
Well, I think organization is definitely one aspect of it, but think about the logging capability.
Hmm.
The audit trails that are left behind by when person A does this and person B does this. That is all logged and tracked. So if you had to go back and search to see what happened, where, and how, now you're able to look at that and say, okay, this is exactly what happened, right? So
If you've implemented
if
it.
you've implemented it properly, exactly. So that's one of the biggest things, right? What we run across is by necessity cloud computing in the whole, right? I'm going to basically go back to the beginning of our conversation. By necessity, all these organizations and businesses that either used, consumed those services or provided those services, right? So let's talk about consuming those services. They did this because they just, they don't know any better. They're looking at the provider and saying, this is what I need. And those providers were giving them, basically they're building and deploying servers and providing Dell laptops or desktops in their offices. So these businesses have been around for 20, 30, 40 years, providing this capability to their consumers, people who are consuming the services or products. By force or necessity, they had to go to cloud. And when they did this, some of the things were overlooked because they were forced or rushed into it, right? So that's a big thing when you're talking about the overall architecture, design, and security. When they were forced to do it, it's kind of like hurry up and get it done. You do it, yeah, you're up there, but is it secure? Is it done properly? Those are the things that we look into. So I think that again, going back to that point of people really should be very aware and focused on what their current state is and what their end state that they're looking to get to. I think that's very important from a transformation standpoint. We use the word transformation because it is truly a transformation from what you're doing and how you're doing it to what you should be doing and be a little bit more leaner and a little bit more efficient. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I hope so. Thank you so much. And any last words before we head out today, before we end the call?
No, I mean, I think, listen, thank you so much for the opportunity for having offsite, Farhan and I on here today. I think it's a great opportunity for folks to truly learn and understand what cloud computing is because there's a lot of information out there, and people aren't able to easily digest it. If you're not in the business, and that's one of the things that we our go-to-market strategy is that, look, you concentrate on your core business, whether it's accounting companies, CPA firms, whether it's manufacturing firms, any other industry or vertical market out there. You're good at what you do. Continue doing that, right? You don't have time to sit there and unless you do, you don't have time to sit there and worry about the latest and greatest in trends when it comes to technology, innovative ways for you to be able to do what you need to get done. So that's what we do, right? So thank you so much for the opportunity for us to share this knowledge that we have for everybody that listens in and watches your show, Gary.
Yeah, thank you. And Farhan, and how about you before you leave?
Yeah, well, thank you, Gary. Thank you for giving us the opportunity. The only thing I would say to the folks out there is that, in terms of cloud, we know it's here. It's here to stay. We have to learn to adapt to the way things are moving in this kind of automation, cloud-driven direction. And if anyone has any questions or any concerns, we're we have a different purpose, and our motto at Offsite is purpose over profit. And what that means is we're not looking to build business for financial reasons. What we want to do is our vision is to help smaller businesses out there to succeed, to be able to utilize technology and really leverage it, and get to a point that they can be as efficient as they need to be to succeed. And so we're always here. We're available. If anyone has any questions, whether they're just looking for some feedback or they have some advice that they're looking for, we're here to provide it.
Well, thank you so much, guys, for coming, and hope you enjoyed Back to Basics moment as usual. Thank you.
Thanks, man.
So thank you guys for coming on the show. So we have learned so much today. We've learned cloud computing, we've learned pricing, we've learned data, we've learned security, all in one for business and for consumers. And I hope you learned that lesson too. So here's a quote of the day. And the quote of the day is, cloud is about how you do computing, not where you do computing. Now just keep that in mind, and that's what Kal said, and that's what Farhan said from Offsite. So just keep that in mind today. So, as always, at the end of the episode, I always say, everything in life goes back to basics, and that's what we did today, guys. So you take care, God bless, and I'll see you next week. Keep on commenting, keep on following, and stay blessed. Take care. Next week's episode on Back to Basics.
Sometimes it's inconceivable to me that we're still committing some of those same mistakes. People have to learn through experience, and partly because, you don't really go to school to get a degree in how to be a chief information officer. There is quite a bit of experiential learning that's involved after you've mastered maybe some fundamental technical skills.
Yeah,
so to me, that's back to basics. Is try not to commit the sins of your forefathers over and over again.
So Mark, with that comment of yours, I think I've read some few pieces